As a law firm owner, do you think you should consider ditching all things digital? In this flood of digital we have, what we're learning is that analog is starting to show up in ways that it never showed up before. I just got done with a conversation of a very large law firm that is dedicating a sizable amount of their budget to analog marketing, not because they don't want to do digital anymore, but because they want it as a hedge against all the things that are happening in digital with AI and the trust levels. And what they're seeing is an increased cost per lead and slightly decrease in conversions. And so they're looking for ways to add analog. And so they wanted to talk to me about it. Now, that spurred a conversation that I had with my ECIB, that's my East Coast Italian bride, Maria. She recently purchased some rugs for the house. And when they came in, I noticed inside was a note. And the note wasn't really handwritten. It was done in a handwritten font, but it wasn't handwritten. It was from the founder. You could tell it wasn't written professionally, let's say. And it was signed with love for a rug. And so I grabbed it and I asked my bride about it. She goes, "Oh, that's the reason I ordered from that company. I remember that this company sent me that note and that's why I ordered from them again." I go, "Okay, that makes a lot of sense." I want you to start thinking about the places in which analog makes sense, not to eliminate digital, but rather not to just rely solely on digital, to add analog in a way that's going to matter. So let's unpack this for you, shall we? This is called the Lead Generation Accelerator. So believe it or not, you could use analog to generate leads. There are law firms that their number one lead source is direct mail. Depending on the practice area, what they do is they go and they acquire these lists. And then they use this cold outreach. Now, don't confuse this for solicitation because it's not. You can do this in every state that I'm aware of, in every bar association. You can send a direct mail piece based on that list, whether it's to every single neighbor in the area, or you're going to send a targeted list to somebody who's going through something. And you start to talk about maybe lumpy mail where you're sending a 3D package, but most importantly, you're sending a handwritten note, or at least a note that looks like it's handwritten. And these companies, you can pay them rather than printing out a letter. It'll actually handwrite the letter, and you can make it written on like legal pad paper. It looks very authentic, and you're sending them a note. It's ridiculously high converting. What I mean by ridiculously high converting is it converts at 4 to 5%, sometimes higher. Regular direct mail for everybody else in the world converts at like a 0.5% or 1%. In a law firm, when you're converting at 4 or 5%, it's literally like printing money. So you could generate leads to this list using that type of service. You can also warm nurture leads. So leads that are unconverted, those leads that called and didn't set an appointment, didn't show, didn't retain the firm. You could nurture them by sending them a handwritten note, by just saying, "Hey, has this situation been resolved yet?" You could just send them something in the mail that's nurturing them in a way that email can't break through. Let's face it, email is delivered 26% of the time at a high watermark, 15% of the time at a low watermark. Direct mail delivery is through the roof. Now, whether it's open or not is a whole other question. But for now, know that you can go analog and start generating leads and nurturing your leads. Now, the one thing we'll talk about is tier A, is this idea that these become high value leads because they just feel like you have a reputation with them. These become higher valued leads. They convert higher. They're more likely to buy. They're more likely to refer because they just have this personalization from a handwritten note that they didn't ordinarily have with email and videos and social media. So there's a connection they have with you at a level that they wouldn't normally have before. Down here in this tier B, it talks about automation and robot. Did you know that, of course, they've automated where robots use physical pens and they write the handwritten note and it looks like it comes from somebody in your office or from you? It even has like the ligature that connects together and it feels very authentic and it makes sure that the envelope gets open because they handwrite the envelope as well. And what happens is because of that, they have this ridiculous amount of trust and the lead value goes through the roof. This is why a lot of direct mail campaigns work at a very high level, or they work very well to nurture. Now, where else could this work in your perfect client life cycles? Number 3 right here in the onboarding section. So now you've onboarded a client and you secure this relationship early by writing them a handwritten note, thanking them for trusting your firm, showing up in a way that nobody else does anymore. Very rarely does somebody send a handwritten note. And you can automate this entire process through your CRM by triggering a handwritten note that's sent through the mail to your customer, to your client, in a way that makes them feel warm and fuzzy and trusted. And you can actually personalize it and have things in there that are pertinent to them, their family, their case, or whatever, so they doesn't just feel like another, blank rubber stamp kind of situation where they feel like this is actually customized, raising the stakes, going analog rather than digital. The next thing is you could look at the waiting phase inside of every law firm. Is there's always some time between the stages of a case. So based on your practice area, you can start using analog to communicate with your clients, not just send them an email, not just send them a text, not just connect with them on social media. All those things are good and they have their place, but you can actually use analog to beat this waiting game and let them know that you care about them. It's one way for you to go from your clients saying, "Why should I do business with you?" to your clients being referred from somebody else and them walking in the office and saying, "Will you take my case?" This fifth section where it's the climax and the resolution. So now they've got the victory, or whatever a victory means in your practice area. You can do things with them in analog version to make them feel like you remember them during that process. What about post representation, right? So this is that story about my wife, where she remembered this rug company that sent her that note because they followed up with her. You could absolutely use something like this in a long-term nurture, especially if your practice has multiple practice areas. It really doesn't matter what your couple of practice areas are. You want them not to forget about you. You want them not to forget that you do other things, because to them, you were the type of lawyer that did what you did for them, and they might not think and remember that you did everything else. Well, you can use handwritten analog versions to actually follow up with them to make sure that you stay in touch with them. And then finally, let's talk about the next two stages together. Number 6, post-case follow-up. The first one really talks about the 30-day transition, the 1-year anniversary, the referral thank yous, anytime somebody sends you a referral. The other one talks about like client for life advocacy, so that if you have multiple practice areas, you remind them about the different practice areas you have by staying in touch with them. And so what happens is you now build a list of clients you've done business with, and you're communicating with them forever. I was talking to a client not long ago, a large firm. They had 40,000 names on their list, 40,000 clients that they had served in the life of the firm. I said to them, "What's the number one strategy you have for communicating with your past clients?" And they said, "We don't have one." I said, "What do you mean? What kind of emails do you send?" "We don't send emails." "What about text messages?" "We don't send text messages." "How about direct mail?" "We don't send any direct mail." If I bought that firm tomorrow, I probably could double its business just by going back in and warming up that list again and reminding them what we did for them and starting to nurture them. And one of the things that I would do is I would be using this entire strategy to nurture that list, to bring them back to life, and to continue to work with them month over month over month over month. And I would be sending direct mail, and I'd be stepping aside from digital, and I'd be doing all things analog to separate myself from everybody else. Does that mean I wouldn't do digital? No, I would still send email. It's relatively free. I would still send SMS. It's relatively inexpensive. I would still connect with them on social media. It's where a lot of people are. But I want to be a disruptor. I want to show up in a way that they are not expecting a law firm to show up. And I want to do it in a way that makes them feel personal. I want them to feel like I care about them. You want to start to connect with them in a way that nobody else is. You want to remind them in this AI age that you're human, and people want to do business with humans. Separate yourself from all the other companies that are relying on nothing but digital, and you want to start to bridge the gap using these strategies. This thinking outside of the box in this way is what separates those law firms that generate a high amount of profitability, 30, 40, 50% net incomes, that allow their firms to grow, that allow them to gain their freedom, that don't feel like they have to work 90-hour weeks. What they do is they work on the part of the business that's fun for them. They dive into these parts of the business that could use some uplift, and they start to fold it in a way that's automated. That's not going to cost them a bunch of time and money and resources. Rather, it's going to be an investment, and they're going to start to see all their boats lift up. You're going to see your new leads lift up, your referrals lift up, your set rate, your show rate, your hire rate, your average client value lift up. You're going to see a difference in the way people come into your office. Rather than saying, why should I hire you? They're going to say something like, will your firm take my case? Because you're going to build a relationship in a way that nobody else is doing. I'm not saying digital doesn't work. I'm saying digital has its flaws and it's got its limits. Analog is a great tool to fill in that gap. Let's start writing handwritten notes and increasing your firm's revenues. If you could use some help with ideas on how to increase the revenue of your firm, the profitability of your firm, and most importantly, the lifestyle that you as the owner have generated from your law firm, visit us at thelawfirmsecret.com. Happy to walk alongside of you and provide you with the tools and resources, or schedule a call and have a kneecap to kneecap conversation. Happy to do that. Look forward to meeting you in person someday.